So I came across a post that was talking about humble, being humble. Shout out to my bro, Keon. Reminded me of this conversation that I had with myself that I wanted to have in regards to this post that I saw. It was, I think the post meant well. It was supposed to be, a positive affirmation, something for your mental and emotional well-being. I don't want to quote, or I can't quote the post directly, but it basically was saying that being humble is like dimming your light. That you shouldn't have to be humble so other people can be comfortable around you. Basically saying, step into who you are and be proud of that, and whatever effect it has on people around you is not your problem, it's theirs. And, in theory and in that context, it does make sense. But again, my interpretation of the word humble is a bit different. So I wanted to go to my best friend, one of my best friends, the dictionary, to try to get some more clarity, because my first thought, or the first definition of being humble, does not equate to me as dimming your light or being or accepting or putting yourself in a less prosperous light for the benefit of others. So according to Merriam-Webster, there are three definitions. The first of which is, as an adjective, humble is not proud or haughty. And haughty, Hagghty, is blatantly and disdainfully proud, having or showing an attitude of superiority and contempt for people or things perceived to be inferior. Not arrogant or assertive. The second is reflecting, expressing, or offered in a spirit of deference or submission. Example is a humble apology. And the third is ranking low in a hierarchy or scale, insignificant, unpretentious. That's the A of the, that's 3A, and 3B is not costly or luxurious, a humble contraption. So the only portion of that definition that to me makes sense with the post, and this is actually, I believe, an attitude that is shared, not just with that post, but for a lot of people. I think in today's age, there is a lack of humility. It's seen as a negative, or it seems as if you are being told to stay in your place and feel like you're less than if someone, expresses the value of humility or states you should be a little bit more humble. But I don't think that people are actually even understanding what humility is. Humility is, at least in those definitions, it has nothing to do with what you think of yourself. It doesn't even have anything to do with what people think of you per se. And not being proud or haughty, there's context to that. It's okay. I'm kind of gonna go in not two different directions, but in two directions with this. So not being proud or haughty or being arrogant or assertive, we as sentient beings, whether people like to admit it or not, the fact of the matter is that we did not create ourselves. Okay? We all understand that the universe is abound with energy, and that we came to be, if by the very least amount of admittance, our parents were the direct contributors of our life. Like if they didn't come together, we in this form would not exist. And I don't want to turn this into a faith-based discussion, but in the same vein, I think faith is something that people deny, because in everything that we encounter in life, there's a level of belief that has to be there for it to have and hold weight and accountability. So science is faith-based. And I know that may be difficult for some people to hear, but being a person who, I'm not a scientist, but I understand the scientific method and the simple basic definitions of science, that everything is a theory. Even if it's considered a law in the scientific realm, it's only a law until it's disproven. So people are using the resources that they have at hand in that time to define certain entities and define the world around them to the best of their ability until something else comes out. Just like people thought the world was flat until they had pictures that showed that it was round, and there's still debate over that, and so on and so forth. So I don't want to get too far off track, but everything that we have in this life is based off of what and how much do we believe it. The theory behind what's going on. So everything is based off belief and faith. And in the space of being humble, it merely is a way to self-regulate your ego. It's a way to have proper perspective so your ego doesn't take accountability and responsibility for things that it does not actually have control or power over. Now, I do believe that words are spells, and that we do create energy, and there's a frequency that we emit, and that energy goes out into the universe and reverberates and reflects onto the universe, and therefore reverberates and reflects back onto us. So I don't believe that we don't have an effect, but I do believe that we don't control that effect. And I think that's the cornerstone of, self-checking your ego, and that humility that is really the basis of that word humble, right? So I can believe in myself, and it's all about perspective. You can believe that you're the best. And if that's the motivation for you to do anything in this life, that's amazing, right? But you may not be the best, right? So when you don't believe that, and it's not an act of being humble or being humbled or having humility about oneself, then where's your motivation, right? I am a purpose-driven individual. And sometimes I lament the fact that I may not always know the purpose, but I'm doing what I believe and what I feel. I try to tap into that part of me that doesn't necessarily have the loudest voice, but is the most constant. My conscious. You know, if we're all if we're all threads in this fabric, this quilt of existence, we all have a purpose. And that to me is more widespread and more easily depicted in nature than anything, is that there's a cycle, there's a circle, and nature feeds and fuels itself. We're part of a life cycle that's bigger than just human beings. And humility to me ultimately is just relinquishing and understanding and embracing that is the actual initiator. That's the actual spark, is nature, the natural order of things. And again, this conversation is gonna go where it's gonna go, but I think those are the instances with which we run into conflict, is when we go against the natural order of things. You see it in movies, you see it in media, like there's always a bastardization of humanity and nature when humans attempt to defy nature. And there's so many different places that this thought process and that energy can go. Like when we try to defy nature, it never turns out right. Because nature is the design, it's the ultimate design. And therefore it's the ultimate power. Now, nature may have different names and be given different titles and be depicted in different ways in different stories for different cultures. It can be called religion. You know, a lot of faith-based writings give a different, I don't want to say origin story, but give a different label to things that we may talk about in other areas, like creation versus conception. And I think once people realize that we're all telling the same story with different language and different perspectives coming from different areas of the globe, I think we can understand each other better because ultimately we're all experiencing the same things in one way or the other. And to bring it back to being humble, I think that's what it is understanding your piece and knowing that you're no more important than the next person. It's not your job or it's not your place to determine how important you are compared to another person. You should be the most important person to you. But you should understand that other people have that same thing going on within them, and they should feel like they're the most important to themselves. So no, do I think that you should humble yourself to make others comfortable? No, but I also don't believe humbling yourself is putting yourself in a negative space, is not letting your light shine. I think that humbling yourself is acknowledging that you are not an almighty power. And I don't see a place in this world where that perspective is not valuable. You have to understand, and it should be a motivator to be in your purpose. To understand that you are much more of a driving force in your purpose as you fit within the fabric of existence. That's so much more powerful than I'm going to strike it on my own and defy the natural order of things. It's also who is defining the natural order of things. If white supremacy, let's say, is the definition of the natural order, that's them self-defining that, and that's them putting their perspective out onto the world. That doesn't make it correct. And if a lot of people follow it, that doesn't make it correct either. We know that to be true. So we can't use that as an example of, oh, I'm not going to be humble because this philosophy says that I ain't shit. It's not real. And it's convoluted. And in all honesty, that meme, that clip that I saw, that reel where they're talking about don't humble yourself, that sounds like a driving component of someone who has racist or supremacist type perspectives and views, because they do believe that they're better than anyone, and they're going to treat people like they're better than everyone. And that's no bueno. I don't think that there's anything positive or anything. It is a contributory faction. It is something that contributes to the natural order. Is you have to have a yang to a yin. So in that space, I guess it is necessary, but I don't think you should. I think people are going to come to that conclusion and that decision and the perspective on their own terms. I don't think you need to pump a certain level of arrogance. I don't think you need to be arrogant to succeed. Simple. I don't believe that. I think you should be self-confident. I think you should be absolutely have, I think you should absolutely have faith in yourself and your abilities. But I don't think that you need to be arrogant in the space of, I'm only this good if everybody else is that bad. And it's self-hypnosis. Even if that little tidbit of information is just a way to help you overcome insecurities and self-doubt, you hypnotize yourself, and then it's not long before you're having to course correct and bring yourself back down, because you start to see yourself really as you're better than everybody else. And then you start to treat people like you're better than them. And we're all humans at the end of the day. And we're no better or worse than our counterparts, because we don't fully understand or even appreciate what our purpose is in this world. What is success? What does it really mean to be successful? And, you know, that will lead to another episode and another conversation about what is success really? What is it that we really need to feel, or what sensation are we seeking and chasing that we equate to success or satisfaction? There's a whole nother conversation to have about that. But in this space, when we're talking about humility and what it means to be humble, and then what's the opposite of that, I don't believe the opposite of humility is submission in the space where you don't serve your purpose, where you don't have belief in your purpose and your place in this existence. And I think the closer the closer that we get to the actual real meaning and what's important, the source, and actually having an accurate and real conversation about our place in the universe, and begin to seek purpose over prize or prosperity in man or in humans' perspective, whatever prosperity means. I think the better off that will be. You know, I seek harmony. And I'm on a journey. I think it's been my whole life, but I think I'm more in tune, which makes me more curious and a seeker of that harmony in a way that has me fulfilled and curious and constantly looking and seeking to be more purposeful in everything that it is that I do. And I think being humble is powerful. Acknowledging and submitting and understanding that there is a purpose and a power greater. And when I say greater, like, we don't control the universe. We control our contribution to the universe. Alignment doesn't necessarily happen when you have a plan, you do something, and the plan comes to fruition. And then being powerless is not when you have a plan and you put energy into that plan and it fails. That may not be what you're aligned to do. So no matter how good of a plan, and no matter how good of an effort, and no matter how, well intended, that plan you have was, execution of it goes against nature, and the universe will not let it go. And maybe the purpose in there is to teach you that. Maybe the failure is to teach you that. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways, and it's not, I don't hear or I don't feel like any of these things have to be related to putting yourself in a submissive position compared to other humans. I think acknowledging who you are and what control you actually have, and then understanding that other people have that same responsibility, that everyone is accountable for their space. Like, I think humbleness is just about acknowledgement. It has nothing to do with you saying to yourself that I'm less than these other people. That way they feel comfortable being around me. If a janitor walks into a hospital, he shouldn't feel like he's any less important than the brain surgeon or the heart surgeon, because the brain or heart surgeon doesn't do what he does. And one could argue that that custodian, that environmental maintenance person, the people who, take out the trash and sweep the floors and, wipe the stains off of the walls and things of that nature, they contribute to patient care just as much as someone who's in the OR correcting a deadly, disease or a deadly injury to an individual. Because that person may not have even gotten on that table if there was trash on the floor, or the trash cans were overflowed, or the floors were dirty. They wouldn't even trust that surgeon in that hospital if when they walked in, it wasn't clean. So we all have purpose, and we all have power, and we all contribute to this organism equally. And there needs to be respect given for that. There needs to be homage. People need to be humble and understand that, yes, you have your place, but so do these people. And we all deserve to feel that light, that warmth shine on us. We only have corruption when people try to put themselves in a place where they are more important or mean more to existence than others. And that real, to me, is a tipping point. And I don't even say a tipping point. That thought process can be an origin. It's a slippery slope to feeling one's own supremacy above all others. And yeah, you can definitely obtain things with that mindset, but I wouldn't call it success. I wouldn't say that you're diminishing someone else's spirit to uplift your own is not the wave, ever. And we've seen throughout history people with that mindset and the destruction that it's caused. And that may be just a poster board for us to show and see that that's not the mindset that we should have. So that post about not being humble is dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing. You know, and it also shows that line between genius and insanity is super thin, and it could be non-existent. So be careful. Till the next time. I just had one more thing to add. One of my all-time favorite songs, shout out to Kendrick Lamar, is on his To Pimp a Butterfly album. I believe the title is How Much Does a Dollar Cost? And it is one of the things that put me in the mindset to even have a conversation like this with myself. And basically the concept of the song, and I don't know if this is a parable that he just created into a song, if this is something that is in a religious text somewhere, but it just makes sense. And in the song, he's talking about himself being in a place, in a space, and being around, he's a successful artist, and he came from very meager beginnings, and now that he has gained success and financial freedom to a certain degree, and has experienced people trying to scam him and get money from him and take advantage of him, how he's very determined to not be a victim of being taken advantage of. And there's a homeless person who walks up to him, who at first sight he believes is, just a regular person out in the street. Like, this homeless guy either uses drugs or drinks alcohol, and at a rate that has put him in the position that he's in, so he's not worthy of any help. And the homeless person, the person is begging and really just asks him for $1. And Kendrick is like giving all these reasons that so many people that I've encountered in my life, how they believe, whether out loud or in secrecy. When they see the homeless, when they see someone who they think is not deserving or has put themselves in a position that they're in and doesn't deserve assistance, or isn't going to use whatever assistance we give in a way that we deem right. Kendrick in the song basically gives all the reasons why he doesn't feel like he should help this person. And ultimately, it turns out that this person, that this whole process was a test, and that the person that was asking him for money was actually the supreme being, and that him looking at this person and judging them and not helping when he's been blessed with so much is actually his ticket to hell, or him being locked out of the promised land. And that's a powerful message to me, because it shows how we need to always understand how connected we are as human beings, and how our status and our position is not ultimately so much the result of our works. I mean, and our works are important, but this fabric, the universe, the frequency that's out, the alignment, we understand that was there before we existed, and it'll be there after we existed, and we're just here to serve that. And when people try to define that in their own terms and become that, that's when disillusionment, disappointment, and that arrogance that needs a dose of humbleness rears its head. If you've been blessed, it is your obligation to humanity. It's your obligation to the blessing that you bless others. And that's not a faith thing. That's not a religious thing. That's just real. We just went through a pandemic where people who felt like they had everything in order were stripped down to the bare minimum, not by their own doing. Hardworking, contributing citizens to the economy lost jobs, are homeless, are in a space that they never thought that they would be in or could be in. There's so many industries, once COVID came out and once COVID, people experienced that pandemic and the peripheral effects of the pandemic and how industries consolidated and how technology is creating a space where manpower isn't necessary, not in the traditional sense, where people are having difficulty finding and keeping jobs, finding a space to actually contribute to their own prosperity and to the prosperity of existence. We need to understand that these things that we have, they're blessings. And you don't have domain over those. It's your obligation to pour into those that are less fortunate. It's a finite amount of resources out here. And this is not meaning that you give away your fortune and put yourself in squalor for others. But it does mean that in the instances that you have an opportunity to give and to show reverence for the blessings that you have received, you damn sure better do it. Because those blessings can be taken away from you just as fast or faster than you acquired them. And I'm using the term blessing, and I'm not ashamed of any faith that people may or may not think that I have. I say blessings not in necessarily a biblical reference. It's just I have and am and always will acknowledge that there is a power out there greater than anything we could imagine that actually implemented this grand design. And I'll never take credit for something that I don't control. But it's so obvious that it exists. So, to quote another Kendrick song, sit down and be humble. Okay. Now on to the next one.